Hello, welcome to Wilson's BBQ. In this video, I'm going to show you my go-to method for cooking beef plate ribs. So these are the big Dino ribs that you see on Instagram, the kind of ribs that are served at Texas barbecue restaurants. And I'm willing to argue that they are the easiest thing to cook in barbecue, even easier than pork shoulder. We have got some absolutely monstrous beef plate ribs. This particular rack of ribs I got from John Davidson's, which is an online butcher here in the UK. When I'm looking to cook this style of big, juicy, huge bone ribs, I'm looking for plate ribs. So one thing that really annoys me about beef ribs, if I'm going to be honest, is the fact that on pretty much every rack of beef ribs there is a layer of fat on the top, just like a fat cap on a brisket, which I want to keep. Below that there is often a layer of silver skin and then the meat. Problem with the silver skin is that that just won't render. It doesn't render, it doesn't melt. There's nothing that you can do to this silver skin that's going to get rid of it, and it's going to be chewy, it's going to be tough. And I know some barbecue restaurants in Texas leave it on and do absolutely nothing with it. I've tried that. Doesn't work for me. So reluctantly, I'm gonna have to remove all of that silver skin, and I've kind of eyeballed where I think it is. It doesn't cover the whole rack of ribs, which is good. So it looks like this is pretty much silver skin free, but everything pretty much here onwards has got a nice thick layer of silver skin. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to get rid of it, which means getting rid of some of this nice fat as well. So I like to keep my knife as flat as possible and just follow the grain. It should peel off nicely. So keeping my knife nice and flat. I've obviously got a nice sharp knife, and the reason why I'm making a real conscious effort to keep my knife flat is because the quality of your trim now is going to really impact your bark. Nice and smooth, really only looking to take the silver skin off, no meat if I can avoid it, nice and rounded where I can. In an ideal world I wouldn't have to do any trim into these, and I can just render the fat cap just like you would on a brisket, and it would be nice and flavoursome and rendered, but got to get rid of that silver skin. So as I say, you could definitely leave that on. I know some people do. As I say, it just doesn't seem to work for me. In terms of the membrane side, sometimes people score it, sometimes people take it off. My preference is to just leave it as is. Under this membrane, there's a huge amount of fat. This membrane is going to keep it in there, but it's also going to help our rib rack to stay together whilst it cooks. Otherwise, try and take off anything that's a little bit weird looking, anything that I think might burn or not contribute to the overall quality of these ribs. So we've got a piece of fat hanging off here. Might be quite nice when it's rendered, but generally I'm just trying to smooth everything out as best as I can. Again, just like the fat cap on a brisket, I don't want anything looking too pointy or too sharp, and I also don't want there to be too much fat. I really didn't take a huge amount off, I just shaved it really lightly just to make sure that there was nothing sticking out. Took that silver skin off, left that membrane on, and now we're going to season them up. So when it comes to seasoning beef ribs, I really do like to keep it real simple. I like to go 2 parts pepper to 1 part salt. And I use specifically the Kirkland brand from Costco coarse black pepper and the Diamond Crystal kosher salt. I particularly like these two because they have a similar grain size, and if you do put them into a shaker, they generally mix well. Just dump it all in and mix it around with my hand. So I'm just going to dump this in. I'm just going to use all this rub to make sure everything is covered. We're not going to eat the membrane, it's just to keep the bones together and keep all this fat in. So I'm not going to waste pepper and salt seasoning this side. This is going to go in my fridge overnight. This is partly because it's going to save me time in the morning, but also because I think this contributes to a much better, darker bark.
So to help me get going pretty quickly in the early morning, I'm just going to set my pit up the night before, and then about 6 o'clock I'm just going to light the pit, bring it up to temperature, and I'm going to get these beef ribs on. I'm going to roll at about 200 Fahrenheit for the first couple of hours just to build up some good smoke, some good colour, but it's really not necessary. If you've got the time, I think it's worth doing. So we're gonna let that run for a couple of hours, and at about the 3-hour mark, I'm just gonna check in on them. Nothing really too much to say other than I'm looking for any areas that might be burning or cooking a little bit too fast, but these ribs look pretty good, so I'm gonna close it down and come back to it again in a couple more hours. I'm just trying to keep a nice, steady, even temperature, making sure my flames don't get too high so nothing burns.
So it has been about 7 hours. I'm just going to check on these beef ribs. They're looking good. The fat's definitely rendered. So we are nice and tender in the majority of this, but we are a little bit tight just on this end. So we are definitely almost there. We're a little bit tighter on this side. I'm actually going to rotate these beef ribs with this brisket. I'm going to put these beef ribs toward the middle. I'm going to edge this slightly less tender side just toward the fire. Get that to catch up. Feels a little bit leaner. This side feels a lot fattier. So we need this to catch up and then they'll be done.
So toward the back of this cook, I'm really looking to keep above 250, in the region of 275, and I'm just looking to get them tender all over. That's all I'm really looking for. I know the fat's rendered, so it's just about getting them nice and soft. I was pretty happy with how these were feeling after a total of about 8 hours. So these came inside and they rested on my kitchen counter for about an hour and a half, and they came down to an internal temperature of about 150 Fahrenheit. I wasn't quite ready to eat these yet, and I have the benefit of having a hot holding oven or a food warmer. So I put the ribs into the warmer and they just hung out there for about an hour before I cut into them.
So these beef ribs have been resting for about an hour. They're looking nice and soft. We've got a messy board here because we're filming 2 videos at the moment. We just did a brisket video, so that's what this is. I'm not going to do too much other than just cut into them and see how we did. So these were super easy to cook. Beef ribs normally are. I didn't wrap them. They got a good crust on them. Some real tender beef in there. I haven't rendered out all the fat, so they're not dry. I'm really happy with that. Again, just a super easy cook. I really didn't do much with these at all. I literally just cooked them until they were tender. Didn't even wrap them when I rested them. I just cooked them until they were done. So I'll have a little bite. That has to be the best. Just comes apart, smoky, got a real good bark on it, good smoke ring for all you people who love smoke rings, juicy, fat's rendered well. I could eat that all day. Completely. That is it. I think it's easier than cooking pork shoulder. If you get a good rack of beef ribs, just cook them nice and steady. Don't cook them too hot. 250, pushing up to 275 is good. Just cook them until they're tender, give them a good rest. 9 times out of 10, they're gonna come out perfectly. So if you like this video, please comment below, give me a like, subscribe to the channel, it really helps me out. And I'll hopefully see you again in a couple of weeks for another video.